Hey folks, welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. This podcast is of a little different nature. It's about business succession. And we did this jointly with Bryan Orr and his dad, Robert. And Billy and I got together, and this podcast will be released on both of our podcast channels, Building HVAC Science and the HVAC School podcast. It's really Bryan's idea, but man, I love the thought, and we decided to roll with it. We talk candidly about family business succession because that's what we're in. We're both in family businesses. And we dig into a part that nobody really warns you about. It's the emotional identity shift of letting go. That would be for Robert, Bryan's dad, and myself. And moving from decision maker to advisor. And the weird tension of still being the face of the brand while your successor has to establish themselves. Then we get into some practical details. And Billy makes the point of comparing our 24-person company to a 400-person company like Bryan and his dad's. But the fundamentals still come through. Role clarity, accountability, and the right people in the right seats. Now, of course, a business podcast wouldn't go by without me talking about EOS. So, of course, that came into the conversation. But we also talk about long-term and what can other business owners do if they have similar situations. Our advice was to start earlier than you think, make a public commitment so you can't quietly back out, and seek outside counsel to keep your head from lying to you, from that self-talk, that voice inside your head, from leading you in the wrong direction. And try not to carry those unresolved issues into family life. Also prepare for the what's next so retirement doesn't become a fading away episode, and keeping relationships, forgiveness, and emotional regulation at the center of what you want the business and the family to survive with in this transition. We also have a great list of books that are in the show notes and links to the characters, the people in the conversation. We hope you enjoy this episode talking about legacy, ego, and the Baton pass. Real talk on family business succession.
All right, so this is going to be fun. This is, I think in the YouTube world especially, they call this a collab. Have you heard that before, Billy? A collab?
I've heard a lot of co-words recently, but no. Involving the word lab.
I'm going to ask more about that. We'll let that go. So, this is a collaborative podcast between the Building HVAC Science podcast and HVAC School. We're going to talk about family business. We're going to talk about succession planning, but I think it'll be easier if we just introduce ourselves. So I'll start with you. I'll start with you, Bill. I mean, everybody already kind of knows you, but just a quick intro.
Sure. Bill Spohn Sr., now the CEO and co-owner of TruTech Tools. Got a storied background in product development and have been having a lot of fun, especially recently as this transition's taken place for me to becoming semi-retired.
Semi-retired. That's how you feel too, Dad, isn't it? Semi-retired?
It's a word I would use. Yeah.
I think just stay there. Just stay semi-retired. Don't go full retired.
Okay.
Just stay.
Don't go full.
Stay in semi. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right.
Bill Jr. Do you go by Bill Jr. or do you go by Billy? What do you prefer?
I've gone by Billy. I thought it was kiddish a long time ago, and then I was just like, Bill Jr. is too hard to say. But Billy Spohn, obviously Bill's son. I am now the president and co-owner of TruTech Tools, and I'm having a lot of fun working on the business rather than in the business.
Yeah, you guys have seen, from my perception, a ton of growth, a ton of process improvement. You just released a new app, all that stuff. So you've been able to be an instrumental part in all that, I assume.
I just look back and we're 3x larger in income than we were when Billy joined in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Well,
yeah.
It's a good stat. You should put that on your LinkedIn.
There you go. 3x'd it.
It's not quite 10x. Right. We'll work on that. Maybe you should get some coaching from Grant Cardone. He'll get you there. Awesome. And then Robert.
Robert, yeah. My name is Robert Orr. I'm the co-founder of Kalos with Bryan, and I'm currently the CEO. I'm semi-retired. It's probably been a year and a half or since we had a 3-year period, and now Bryan has full control.
Which is what I've been after this whole time.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that up.
You know what I mean? A little bit of a control freak.
There's the human factor, and most humans have an ego, and Bryan has a big one.
Like I said, I come by it honest.
So anyway, so I'm still the CEO. I have a title, but I don't do day-to-day operations at all.
Walks a lot of job sites, talks to a lot of employees.
Very valuable. Yeah. I think I was talking to an older gentleman. He says, at my stage, presence means something. And it's a little hard for me to hear.
Why? Because you don't want to be present?
Well, no, it just sounds egocentric or something.
I thought you had a hearing problem.
Yeah. But I think it's true.
Great. So, yeah, we're going to talk through a little bit of our stories, I guess, and also some of the things, especially, I think, Bill, you're the structured one of the group here. I'm sure Billy's the same. I'm sure he comes by that honest as well. But yeah, let's go through some of these key points. What are some of the first things maybe that you, because again, we talked years ago, I think it was at, I don't even remember what event it was, about some of the other things that you were considering doing in the business. And now you've really decided to lean into this plan of having Billy be the one to take over and run the show long term.
Right. And some of it goes back to conversation you and my wife, Marilyn, and I had about legacy versus asset business. And you seem pretty clear on that. I want to say around 2018, 2019, when we had this conversation. And that really implanted as a thought to pursue. Is it something that we're going to grow to sell or something we're going to grow to keep? And we talked about that a lot. So one of the things is this is like a topic nobody warned you about, but the emotional side of letting go and the identity shift. I guess that would be Robert, yourself, and myself. It's not just a transaction. There's something else going on.
Wow. I'm surprised you brought that up. It's a big thing for me that I wouldn't have suspected.
It's how does it feel? And you and Bryan are both founders. There's got to be this feeling of, will things be protected as I let go? That's a feeling that I have too. This is a tough one, I think, this first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. It was unsuspecting to me in ways, but giving it up and realizing that I don't have the same value that I used to. In the beginning, it was mostly my expertise. I'd run construction companies and been in the trades for a long time, and Bryan was pretty young. But as things have transitioned over time, Bryan's the more structure building one of the two of us. And even in this case here, it's just that I'm no longer involved. And at this point, I'm really not needed. I think I have something to bring to the table, but I'm not needed anymore. And sure, that has emotions to it on some level, but I wouldn't change anything. It's good. But I'm surprised at the emotions I have.
I look at it like it's nothing I've ever experienced before. I can't be prepared for this. I just have to live through it. Again, I think we could talk maybe at length outside of this, but I think we're probably about on the same page and moving from decision maker to advisor. And that's what I try to keep that in mind. And Billy, you can speak towards a couple of times where Billy's like, push back a little. Like, Dad, when you say that, people are going to think you're still running the company. You can't talk like that.
Right.
I guess that's not in the vein of me trying to say Bill's out of here type of deal. It's just I have to establish myself.
Right.
Sure. A little bit.
Yep.
Yeah. And Bill, you've always been, it's funny for me to compare the two of you because I don't think there could hardly be two different personalities because I know you both pretty well between Dad and Bill. But the similarity there is that you really have been the face of TruTech. Sometimes people would get the Jim and you thing confused early on, but over the last, as long as I've known TruTech, you've been the face of TruTech. And TruTech is a very customer-centric business. So you have all those relationships and people look to you and they trust you. And Kalos is the same way. Dad built all these relationships with especially a lot of our commercial clients, a lot of our grocery clients, and was the face of that for the longest time. And I think even today, people still call you. Yeah, they
sure.
still.
I'm still the CEO. I had that title. And so
Yeah.
With those people, I think it hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah. I think for you, Bill, though, that's what Billy's saying. It's like a little bit of a hard thing because people do thousands and thousands of people who are used to have interacted with you in trade shows and all that now need to do more of that with Billy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just say I took it upon myself I need to be more social. I'm not the most social person and will call somebody or something. I'd just rather respond to an email, but I got to break out of that.
If you called me on the phone, I would immediately think it was very serious just because of your voice in general. I would have no problem taking you seriously. That's for sure.
You've told me that before. Yeah. I sound like I'm yelling at you. I think it was what she said, which I thought about quite a bit. And I was just like, you maybe have a point, but I can't change that. So
you got to be yourself. Yeah. It's not yelling so much as it is. You just sound like a kind of person I wouldn't want to mess with. I'll just put it that way. I wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley late at night.
That's not a terrible thing. Yeah.
How about the successor? That would be Bryan and Billy. And again, these are like all different time frames and all, but did you ever feel like the transition was taking a little bit too long?
Yes and no. For me, I still don't want the transition to happen in the sense that we don't still have what we always had, but I think is a really good thing. But there are the leadership decisions. And Jonathan Schaefer, our employee development guy, who I think you've probably met before, Bill, he uses the term nexus points a lot. And it's like this idea of when you hand off a baton in a race, if you're doing a relay race, and both people hold on too long, that doesn't work. And you don't want them throwing the baton at you. That doesn't work. And you also have to let go at the right time. And that's when you're making a transition in business. That's not one thing that happens all at once. It's 1,000 different little things that have to happen all at the right time in general. And you don't always get it right. But that's more where you guys know, like, I'm very technology focused. I like technology, and we're sitting in my office with all my goofy podcast stuff here right now. And that was really the only one that sometimes was a little bit of a tension. It was like, because I always wanted to move ahead to the biggest and best thing. And Dad's just more practical. He's more old school in that, which I think both have aspects to them. But that, I think, was probably the only time that it was really, because I always valued the monetary advice. I always valued the client facing side. I always valued all of that. There was never really any conflict about that.
I think it's gone well. But there's been times from my side, Bill, that decisions were made and maybe I was consulted, maybe I wasn't, and I didn't agree with it. I didn't think it was right. And I was telling somebody about this. So what I would do is I would just go home, take a nap, because when you turn it over, you're turning it over. And I fully trust Bryan, but he's not going to make decisions that I would make. It's just not. And that's okay. That's how it has to be and how it should be. So there is that side to it. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that I have to agree with everything. I mean, not that anything fundamental at all has changed. But there are personalities and there's gifts and traits that people have, but it's their turn to lead and it's going to be different.
As it was for you and I, Robert, you got to own it when you decide on it.
Right.
And the consequences of that are formative. The world will feed back to you if it's really out of line.
For me, is it taking too long? Quite frankly, I think Bill's surprised at how quickly this is going. And I think he had predicted he'd be working 3 days a week until the end of this year, but I think you've now moved that up to the end of March 2026 because, quite frankly, I've been around the leadership team a lot. I've been around Bill a lot, such that I feel comfortable leading things and leading our leadership team. So, like Bryan said, I do really value Bill's monetary advice. I mean, whenever our insurance agent emails us, it's like, I'm not quite prepared for that yet. I don't really know what you're talking about. I don't know if we need this stuff. And I just say, yes, there are aspects of the business that I think can be done differently. And part of it is kind of like Bryan, technology and new technologies that are coming about. But I'm not really incentivized to change the soul of our business or the fundamentals of our business. It's just Bill and previous co-owners have built a great business that I am very blessed to be in charge of now.
Yeah, I think that's the stewardship thing. Growing up, it would talk a lot about stewardship, our background in our faith. There was a lot of talk about that around monetary things and all that. But I never really understood the idea of stewardship probably until this transition really took hold, where you're taking what is truly, you don't think of it as yours in the possessive sense. You think of it as yours in the responsibility sense.
Right.
And that's weighty. And that's actually why, in some ways, there's a part of me that's like, you talked about legacy versus building something to sell, a transactional business. It's like, man, a transactional business is a little easier. You see pump and dump and all that way. And it's like, man, you just pump it up and you just get rid of it. It's somebody else's problem. But when you're thinking in terms of long-term stewardship, that's just not how you view it, because it's much more about humans and making decisions that are going to do well by them long-term. And it's just funny because as we've gone more and I've had more percentage of ownership and all that, that doesn't make me feel more like it's mine. It makes me feel more like I'm responsible for this thing that I'm charged with tending to, that a lot of people benefit from. You get that feeling at all, Billy? Do you relate to that?
Yeah. And I'd say it hit home more as I got the title, stepped out of my previous marketing manager role and really just started focusing on our people at TruTech. And it's not too much to bear. It's just, it is a big deal to be responsible. And up until Bill and I first started talking about doing this family business succession planning, I just figured TruTech is a job. And a lot of people not in my seat feel that way too. This is my job. This is how I make a living. So that kind of weight is now on my mind whenever I'm making strategic decisions or strategic planning.
We actually sat down maybe last summer and wrote 2 different job descriptions. So previously we had a job description for me as president and CEO, but then we split it in terms of president and CEO and shifted responsibilities over, and then sought clarity from our leadership team to make sure we were on pace with that too. I'll ask all of you. First, I'll ask Billy, what did you think about that process and the impact of it? and then Robert and Bryan.
Sorry, the process of
creating.
the separate job descriptions.
So the role was clear with the title. It isn't just like it's whatever it is.
If it was helpful for Bill and I think it was more helpful for our leadership team and the rest of the company to understand that they aren't doing the same things. And this isn't Bill quasi stepping away with complete hands still control on the business. He's got his own things he needs to focus on, and I've got my own things I need to focus on. So I thought that was a great thing to do right off the bat, especially just because you did hold two roles in a typical company.
Ours is a little more fluid than that. There wasn't a point in time, I don't think. We did have the 3-year thing, but before that, Bryan he essentially ran half the business, or he ran the structure of Kalos is almost entirely his idea. Processes or those sorts of things were all Bryan. And I was handling big commercial clients, projects, maybe the electrical, because I had the electrical license. And so we grew over time and different people, but Bryan wasn't been involved in the business all along. It's not like he wasn't making decisions. I think financial decisions, I made most of those.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of collaboration in that. But I think just from a life standpoint, I had a couple strokes, and at one point I had a stroke and I was there and like the doctors were acting weird, and I just had this feeling like, wow, you know what, I could die here. And that plays into this, that at some point we won't be able to work anymore, or we'll be obsolete. It's a new word I've come familiar with, and things are going to move on. Technology is going to get better, and I don't really feel like chasing it anymore. And so I just was like, yeah, we need to do this. I just wasn't thinking about it. I just thought one day I'd die and Bryan would take over, and that was my succession plan in my head. And so we formalized it. It was a 3-year plan. And then at the end of the 3-year period, we had made some stock transfers before that. So you were now the majority shareholder. And so, yeah, it went without argument. I think I don't think we ever had any disagreement. It was pretty smooth, and we still don't. I don't know that we always have agreed on everything for sure. That wouldn't be human of us, but I think it's gone great. But it's not like he's been very involved in the entire business through the whole growth process. And many of the functions of Kalos, he's the one that designed them and came up with them anyway. So yeah, I think it's great. I think my role is semi-retired now, what I'm doing. My body doesn't handle stress at all anymore. There's just this reality, Bill, that we're getting old. And with that comes things. Sometimes it's just good to just be honest about it. I'm quite sure within 25 years from now, I'll probably be dead. And I know that sounds like odd in this conversation, but that's why we have succession plans, because we're not eternal people. Like, we have an endpoint. And at some point before that, we need to think about it. So that would be my take on that.
For me, because I don't just work with my dad, I also work with my uncle as a co-founder. I also work with my brother as a co-owner and my brother-in-law, right? So it's a whole family thing, and a lot of different personalities and a lot of different talents that come to bear there. And whatever it is with how I'm wired, we do these, I don't know if I ever showed you these predictive indexes that we do, Bill, that helps show us our personality. It's a very interesting system, and I'll give you mine sometime. But I am extremely driving and also extremely willing to take risks. I know this is surprising to you, Bill. Two things that I'm pretty obviously do a lot. But one thing that is strange about that is that I have absolutely no desire to take credit for what's happened here or to push anybody out. And I think that goes along with that legacy thing.
Sure.
It's like, legacy isn't about people knowing my name for centuries to come. Legacy is about doing good that proliferates itself through generations of people, and through generations not only of my family members, but of the tradespeople who we've had a chance to work with, and other people in our community who we have a chance to work with. And how ridiculous would it be if I have that vision and yet I try to push people out who are around me, or make them feel small, or make them feel, to me, it's just so undisputed that all of us, and the 5 owners, but then also the tons of other people who helped build Kalos, are the ones who really did it. I did it too, but alongside all these people. So to me, I think succession planning in terms of clarity is like really important. And we did it in our own way that wasn't maybe as probably as formal or structured as you guys need to do it. But we did it in our own way that works for us. And it was important to me that that process just honored Dad first and foremost, but honored everybody who contributes to it. And that doesn't mean everyone's always going to be happy. Of course, sometimes people want different things out of it. But that does mean that the heart and intent of the exercise is to honor everyone and to build something that's going to continue to do good in the way that we define it. Because I think a lot of private equity folks probably think they're doing good too in their own way. And that's fine. It's not objective truth here about it. But my subjective reality is I like to do things that are good for the humans who are close to me and support tradespeople in the long run. That's what I care about.
I think we both touched on process. And I feel we introduced Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, in 2022, went in full bore with that. And through a 2-year period of consulting with a consultant, launched on our own in June of 24. And I feel like that's probably the biggest gift I could have given Billy to run the company going forward. I want you to react on that.
Yeah, I really don't know if I would have wanted to steward the company that was before EOS was really baked into it, just because I remember one time we had a meeting that we have now every single week of the year, being like, it's called an L10, level 10 meeting in EOS, but we kind of had one prior to going through this whole program, and it was just everybody, and not to their fault, but they were just so many complaints, so many issues being thrown at us, and it's just, what do we do with that?
Or we don't want to do this anymore. There's reluctance to do it again because it's just a cluster of complaints.
Yeah.
Robert's laughing.
Oh, no. I can envision that when you're talking. Yeah. So
I didn't think I would like process so much. I thought it would constrict creative thinking and thinking on your feet, but there's room for creative thinking and thinking on your feet and within process.
I want to throw in a comment here because you introduced me to EOS when you guys were first looking at it, Bill. And what is the guy's name who wrote that book?
Gino Wickman.
Gino Wickman, that's right. And I had read the book and really enjoyed it, as I often do with business stuff. But we're just so weird. I often say, like, we're just rebellious in a lot of ways. And that's how I am. It's like I internalize a lot of different ideas and then I always want to do it my own way. And it's like how I cook too. Like I never follow a recipe. Like I read 5 different recipes and then I try to make it my own. And it's probably worse than if I had just picked one. But it just goes down to how I'm wired. But I think we do experience the same thing, and maybe not necessarily in this transition as much, but the more broad, because it's not necessarily succession planning, but we just hit over 400 employees last week.
Congratulations.
And at that scale, with all the departments that we have and everything else, you say congratulations. I'm not sure yet if it's a blessing or a curse, but not that the people are a curse, but it's just the size is a thing. And you just do realize that without structure, without constraint, creativity really can only thrive within constraint. And for those of us who started as tradespeople, we're like, oh, we don't have constraint. We have, yes, you do. You have the problem to solve, and you have to solve this problem in this given time. And that's where a lot of that creativity comes from. That's how you come up with solutions. But within larger organizations, you just have all of these support roles and people in leadership, and they have to have clarity, lanes, and constraint. And if they don't, it's really bad. And then we still have some spaces that we're working on that. But Bill, I am interested, like, what are some of the things that came out of that, because you got to see the whole process, that were the most transformative to you and your team?
The way we chose to run the business was not for everyone. And some people left or had to go. There's a phrase that's used in the terminology, GWC, gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it. Getting it and wanting it is something you cannot affect in a person from the outside. The capacity you can through training or coaching. But if they don't get it or want it, man, and maybe not everyone who's listening can understand that, but I think the 4 of us can. This get it aspect. I try to describe it as you can have a conversation and turn around and know that person is not going to go in a wild direction or just stop and do nothing. There would just be this trust. What was your question?
No, my question was, what was like the thing that created that structure that then made it, to Billy's point, like he wouldn't want to do it without it. And so, like, what was it about it? And were there any key things about it that made that? And that, I mean, obviously, people, having the right people, that goes back to good to great that I always quote, having the right people in the organization.
And actually, EOS is like, I'd say it's a boiled down concoction of about 20 business books, including good to great. So there's aspects of that in there. It's just everything's woven together. It's a pattern that can be used, modified, but used. I think the role clarity and accountability, and Billy will probably talk a little bit more about that, because he's spoken through that a couple times.
You have a title as a pretty much any employee in the U.S. business system, and then you kind of have a job description, but there are things that can be a little bit more specified in an accountability chart, and that's what we use. We don't use necessarily like an org chart or an organizational chart. This accountability chart really looks at your role and the specific things that you are going to be held accountable for. And the way we use that is we have quarterly conversations. Those are, instead of doing a full year review of somebody or with somebody, you're doing that quarterly so that it's not 1 year banked up trying to remember what happened in a whole year. And part of that process is looking at their accountability chart and are they hitting the things that are on their accountability chart. And if they're not, that's something that needs to be addressed pretty quickly, just because other people in the business and the leadership of the business are expecting you to be held accountable there.
Because there's those baton handoffs that happen in the business on a daily basis beyond just the big baton.
Right. I think it's interesting, and maybe it's for the listeners, but Kalos is 400 employees. TruTech is 24 employees. Yet we're still going through the same process. So whether your business is 2 people, you and your son, or you and your daughter, or you have 399 people who look up to you, the same amount of care needs to go into succession planning.
Yeah. And I would add to that I think it's the same thing, but even then, like, our personalities are different and we know each other. That's no excuse not to have clarity. That's, I think, the clarity and the accountability. I love the word accountability.
I love the word accountability. Yeah. I'd much rather have that than an org chart. Yeah,
yeah, Dad does not like
I
org
don't
charts.
like org charts. But
I don't care for them either, but I do like that. And you have to have that care. You have to have that accountability. But there are going to be some personalities like us that it's a little bit harder for us to have a super structured conversation about some of these things. But that doesn't mean that the results don't have to still be consistent. It doesn't mean that we don't still have to have clarity about what the responsibilities are. I think the clarity piece and the accountability piece are both absolutely key.
Yeah. I think when I was at the symposium, they were talking about business. The guy asked a question about their business, and I think it would be wrong, maybe even impossible, to give people very specific things. But on some level you could, but it's just going to be different for everybody. I tend to be very intuitive, and some people aren't that way at all. So I think there always needs to be this acceptability that people were different, companies are a little different, but at the same time, organization and clarity, like, you can't do without it. And so I think those both need to be present, and some flexibility based on the members of your leadership team. There's just going to have a different flavor, and you don't have to. I think it'd be wrong to try to duplicate what other people do. I think successful companies have always come along and it's somewhat different, but that doesn't exclude some real basics that you have to have.
Yeah. So I think that there's the flip side mistake also, which is like the stone soup approach, where now your company is whatever everyone says it is. Because you see that, right? Sure. And there's certain more social personalities who tend to do that often, where it's like, hey, and that's where you, like to what you were saying, Bill, your business isn't going to be for everybody. It's internally and externally. Yeah. And you have to decide as leaders and as a leadership team, what is it going to be? And sometimes that means that even people on your leadership team aren't going to work out. That's absolutely okay. It's best for everybody that you have that clarity rather than fighting it all the time.
I guess to one of those points there, I guess I thought I could replicate Bill's business kind of approach. Can't. Definitely can't. And obviously his HVAC knowledge is one for the record books that I will never be able to match. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, while Bill's still around and wants to advise and stuff, just trying to soak up as much as I can, because it's not going to be there. And it's not like thinking about his death or anything. It's just someday he's just not going to want to talk about TruTech that day. That's perfectly fine. And that's my problem.
Oh, yeah,
I don't believe it. I'm still going to call him. Yeah. I don't care.
You can call him. It's just me. I don't know if I can.
One other topic here, preserving culture, because we are all individuals and we have different experiences, different background, but we all share like general faith principles. But it has to be more than that. How does that come out in preserving the culture as the transition's happening between two leaders?
I think for us, there's very little change. It's just because we're pretty close. We interact a lot. Me and Bryan do have a lot in common. There are things that we're not in common. And as far as the culture, I think we're completely in alignment with one another. For me, I say this all the time, and so I'll say it again, but like the idea of love your neighbor as yourself is a really good business principle. And I think it's really good for, like, you actually can care for your employees. Like, I know in a lot of businesses, probably the bigger ones, they don't. They honestly don't. And so that doesn't mean that there's some people that just don't fit and they need to move on and find something better. But I think that we can genuinely care. I think that's what drives our culture. That's my take on that.
Yeah. Same. I think Dad and I both have this fundamental belief that you are really defined by how you act, what you do when the chips are down or when things are bad or whatever. That defines. And I think it's always fun when we can prove that to ourselves. I was actually just telling Dad, there's a guy who worked with us for a long time. He was one of my apprentices, a guy I trained personally, who I really care for, still do, just as much. And he left and said some really nasty things walking out the door and tried a couple things and they didn't work out. And then he wanted his old job back. And it was one of those, you kind of burn the bridge on the way out. But the thing is it doesn't change how I feel about him or what I want for him. And it's a cool thing to know. Not saying, oh, I'm so great, but it's the realities of when those things happen that show. And Dad and I are completely on the same page about that. You care about people. You want to do right by them. That doesn't mean you're not firm. It doesn't mean, because that's the thing culturally that I think we did miss as Dad, or we do miss even now as Dad was not as active in the business, is that field marshal on a construction project. Dad's always been really good at that and really engaged in that. And that whole, to some degree, still exists. And so culturally, it's not the kumbaya side, but Michelle Newberry, who works with us, always says clarity is kindness. And on a job site, clarity is kindness. It's kindness to the customer. It's kindness to the guys who are coming after you. It's kindness all around. You're going to have this done tonight, right? Dad always says, what's the plan? Give us the plan. Culturally, that is a little bit of a challenge for me to maintain because I'm not wired as much that way. I come more from a service background, and it's not fun for me to engage in that way as much. And so that is still missing. But the fundamentals of how you think about people, how you care about people, that's, it does come from our faith.
Why we're here. It's not to make as much money as I can. Sure, I want to make money, but it's not the most important thing.
All the while being, what's interesting, especially about you, I think, I have it too, but money is still a scoreboard. And when you're a competitive person, it still matters. But in the same way that like winning the football game matters, where it's like, it matters to me. Like I'm a competitive person. Like I want to win. I don't want to be a loser.
Generally, when I play golf with guys, there's 3 other guys. I want to beat them all. Right. Like, I mean, but I'm happy when they beat me. It's okay. Sure.
It's like, why do you golf? Do you golf to beat people? No, I golf because I like golf. But while I'm golfing, I like to beat people. I like to win. Right. And it's the same way with money. It's like, and I've actually had to learn that as I've gotten older, that a lot of people who have that personality, my brother-in-law Jesse's that way too, very competitive. He wants to win on the scoreboard, and the scoreboard sometimes is money, and that's not wrong. That's actually a good thing as long as you still put people first and love your neighbor first and all that. And I think those fundamentals, that's how you keep culture together. I don't know any other way, those fundamental beliefs. What about you, Bill? Do you have those concerns that keep you up at night?
No. In fact, I get questions like when I go to business meetings, it's like, Bill, what keeps you up at night? And I'm like, this sounds egotistical, but nothing.
The mice scratching in your walls,
that's about it. Like if we have some critters.
Not even indigestion? I mean,
No.
Okay. Wow. I'm jealous.
Or frequent trips to the bathroom, nothing like that. But I want to flip back to discovering your culture such that you can formalize it, communicate it. How does that come about? We went through a process with EOS, and I think it was very clarifying. There were a group of 9 of us at the time, and we went through and identified characteristics that led to our core values. But then going back to what Bryan has said, it's how you act when the chips are down. But I think you have to have enough chips in order to be able to act within your culture. Like you got to be big enough in order to absorb the blow, whether it's a financial one and taking care of somebody, perhaps an employee that needs taken care of. You don't have to take care of them, but they need to be taken care of. You have to be large enough. And it's through these, going back to what he said a little while ago, it's the actions by which, and something that I've used for the last 6 months or so is around the term like leading with grace, is let's be gracious to the customer. Let's be gracious to the employee. Let's be gracious to the vendor. Let's not create an argument when there doesn't need to be one. And it can just simply be solved by flowing through.
Sure. There are limits though, Bill.
Yes.
We laugh, but it just comes, there are limits. So sometimes the customer is always right. Isn't always true. But for the most part, we should have that attitude though.
Yeah. I like the phrase that you just used, flow through. That's something that I've had to learn big time now, being responsible, being the steward of a company that does things that I'm not good at. When I was running an HVAC department primarily, I'm pretty good at HVAC. I did it for a while and still do in my own way. I'm not a good general contractor of a grocery store. That's not in the sense that I haven't done it. That's not what I've done. And now being responsible for that is a little bit of a hit. And that's exactly how I've learned to process it. It's like this idea of having to grab control and having to understand everything and all that, instead being able to flow through. And for me, that just means patience. Yeah. It means being patient. It doesn't mean you're patient and you don't create a process. It means you're patient with the process. And so you put the right people in positions, you create clarity as the best you can. And then you have to let the thing marinate a little bit. You have to let the machine do its thing. And I'm sure some of that was the case through the EOS. But for me, it's my version of that has been, now because of this succession, having to take on things that just really are not my strength.
I guess I just personally still struggle with the word culture, and like what Bill, you were saying maybe since it's not so easily documented, it's kind of hard to, like, if people ask you what's your culture of your business, I could probably give you like 30 different things that might fit that, but maybe that is the culture, is just how you run your business.
It's complex. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is that you run the risk of being trite. You run the risk of being silly when you talk about culture. Because like if you go to any little business right around the corner from us, you go to the mechanic, right? What's your culture? Oh, well, we just treat the customers the way we want to be treated. And we're just great guys. And we just care. We're technically amazing and we're good craftsmen. And it's like everybody says the same thing, right? And that's where you have to distill. It's not just your culture. It's what makes your culture unique. It's why people come to you. It's why they stay with you. Right. And for us, we have not done a really good job of documenting that, but it's very clear to me. And again, this comes from the same thing. Dad has a lot of good stories. The funny thing this is the thing about dads. Now, my kids are doing this to me now, where they have these great stories and you remember them and they don't even remember telling you. And then they hardly even remember the story. But I think the thing we do really well is actually caring about people who do the work and supporting them and doing the work even better. That's something I think we do uniquely well. But I remember, Dad, you telling the story of the first electrician who they put you with when you went out to Disney to work as an electrician, and how the guy just started flipping out on you.
It was actually it was at a Wendy.
It was at a grocery store first.
Well, it was the first time, because little background. So I went to the Air Force Academy, and I tell people growing up, I was pretty much immersed into football. Three things: football, and football. And like, that's just what we didn't learn music at home, and it wasn't a big thing. When we sat around the table and talked, we talked about football. And so it was a big part of my life. And so I went to the Air Force Academy and I played football. And then when I left, I had no practical experience at anything. Like, I was just never taught even really how to change a tire on a car. Like, I just was not. And when my brother was working as an electrician, he got me a job and I was worth a seasoned journeyman. And we went in the store and I remember he says, he goes, can you go out to my truck and get my channel locks for me? Which is classic because everybody knows what channel locks are. I was probably 19 at the time. And I said, what are channel locks? And he just flipped out. Like, he was like, who have they sent me here? And,
I remember you said, do you want to fight me? Is that why you're acting this way? Because I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to handle this.
I don't know how to handle this. Like, you're mad. You're yelling at me. And I don't know why. I don't know. What the hell are channel locks? Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. The only reason I thought of that story is I think there is this through line of being compassionate towards the person who's at that stage. Like, okay. Yeah. All right. Let's work through this together. And not in a traditional academic way. Okay, now read the book on channel locks, but in that human apprenticeship sort of way. I think that's a through line of our culture that really has been here from the beginning and hopefully will continue.
Sure. So let's hit one more topic and then we'll wrap. This would be on advice to other family businesses. Hopefully this goes viral, Bryan, through our two channels here. What kind of advice would you give to businesses about timelines, formalization, outside advice?
I want to start with you. I want to hear what you have to say first because it's going to be so much more structured than what I have to say.
So it did start early. I think the notes I have going back to like 2021, I realized I would need to do something in the next 6, 7, 8 years and started to take notes. And I did talk to outside advisors. We have a small advisory board that exists outside of TruTech. People from outside of TruTech who know about us, and started to talk with a couple of those people, do some online research and things like that, but also be willing to share the story, share the concern, share the elect that we had no knowledge about doing this. So I think it's through this over communication that I'm going to do this. That's the other thing I'll say. When I really think something's important that I need to do, but I'm not likely to do it, or it's going to be hard for me to do it, I make a public commitment. And I never try to fail on public commitments. I put something out there that's going to continue to attract me towards this goal. So when I started to talk about it, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it was something I couldn't give up on. I couldn't just let slide. And I had to come up with some 6 or 12 month things that had to be done. And maybe just a couple things. Get the research done, talk to attorneys, get some structure in place, see how other people do it. So that was my structure.
I would just say I've joined a local business group, I guess, through the University of Pittsburgh. And I got to imagine most universities of a decent size have something like this, like a business group for young entrepreneurs or just entrepreneurs in general So I would definitely suggest doing that. There's a ton of good books out there. And if anybody's interested in what at least Bill and I have read or what books we have, I'm sure we'd be happy to share the names of those books. Just because you can watch a YouTube video on succession planning or how to take over a family business or how to take over any business. But I just feel like actually sitting down and reading and being with the thoughts in your head is better than a YouTube video for this aspect of learning. And then what Bill said, I started telling other people, and then once you tell somebody else something, you're committed to doing it because you feel that responsibility.
The world made a place for that to happen in conversation and in reality because you said it. Otherwise, it would be like just boop, surprise. No. And you get to work that through it. It's a low stress way of doing it. It seems like it might be stressful because you got to announce something, but it's actually a lower stress way in the long run.
And people are probably going to ask you very simple questions instead of the very nuanced questions that are in your head.
The ones that you imagine in your head.
And I guess that's the last thing I'll say is I tend to get in my head a lot, but it's important to talk to other people about what's in your head. Don't let it consume you.
Yeah. So the structure too,
it's not necessarily structure. I mean, he just said like, what are the tips for family business? Yeah,
okay. So. I think listening to Bill and Billy, we built this business together. So it wasn't anything too mysterious. There were stock. We had those discussions of how we were going to do that. And we did have some succession planning on that. We had a stock agreement that we made for all the owners and we did some things. And that's certainly with input from outside sources. And it's always good to have people that you know and trust that know you, that you can go to for advice. And I think you guys alluded to that. And so, you would always, because we're all in our own head. And if we didn't have someone on the outside to talk to, all of our heads would be full of stuff that just have a lot of emotions and innuendos and things that just aren't true. That's always wise to get outside advice. But it would be with people that you respect, that you know that they would have good insight. But for us, we had a 3-year plan. It was somewhat structured. We talked about it. We agreed. And it was probably less structured than a lot of people, but it wasn't like we didn't know the business together. There certainly wasn't any mistrust among us. Not that everything was perfect. So that's about all I have to share. I don't like it. Ours would be, it depends on what business you're in. If the family business is one of the sons that's coming in from the outside, it isn't involved, it would be much different because it's just not what we had. We really worked together to grow the business from the beginning. And so
I'm going to just focus a little bit more on just the more general question, which is maybe a little less about succession planning and it's more about making family businesses work and ownership and leadership in general. I think if you're dealing with people who have really massive egos and can't let it go, then it's going to be really hard. Yeah. Try not to get into that situation in the first place. And I think it's true because I think I would speak to a lot of the kids out there because people come up to me all the time and ask me about this stuff. And sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's just somebody else who is an owner of the business. And it's like, yeah, but they've got this massive ego and it's all tied up in it. It's like, maybe just go get another job then. I don't know. I think that would be really hard. So dad's never been that way about this. And so that makes it easier. But yeah, I think if you're in the position where you're the one with the ego, you really have to work on that. You really have to work to make space for others. And making space for other people is not the same as giving them license to do whatever they want or not making them earn it. I have 5 kids who work in the business now, and they all start in rank and file positions and they all report to somebody else and they don't get special treatment. In the sense that they get special treatment in the sense that they have access to me because I'm their dad, but they don't get special treatment within the business. If they bring things to me that's like, hey, I think this is unfair, go talk to your manager. That's how that works. Go talk to HR if you got a problem with it. One time, one of my sons said, I think I'm going to have to quit. I was like, that would be really unfortunate. I think you should talk to HR about that. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to give him life advice about 2 of my sons' refrigeration tech. So if they want to talk about a rack or they're running into something with CO2, something new, or a safety concern about this hose or that hose they're using that came up a couple of days ago, sure, I'll talk about that. That's totally valid. I think the whole questions around these bigger issues, though, I would just say one thing that Dad and I have done really well, and I think our family does do especially well, is having the hard conversation. Don't carry that baggage all over the place. I see families who go to Thanksgiving and the tension of the business is still there. Yeah. And it's like, man, you got to cut that crap out. Yeah. And the reason why we don't have the tension at Thanksgiving is because if there's a hard conversation to be had, we just have it. Right. And sometimes it is a little emotional. Sometimes you do feel sad afterwards or you have to like compromise in some way, but just do it. Get it done. Eat the frog. Get it over with. Don't carry that into the rest of your life because that's misery. And I think that's the thing that people are always trying to avoid in family conversations. You got your daddy issues or your mommy issues or somebody wronged somebody else 3 years ago in Cancun or whatever. And that just carries on and doesn't get really truly dealt with. And so if you're in the type of family that you can't deal with issues or you
Sure.
can't have those conversations, I would advise you get that worked out before you move ahead. And if you can, then just do it and do it quicker. And again, there's lots of structures that can support you. But I think in most cases, Tommy Mello just posted this the other day, and Tommy and I don't always see eye to eye on everything business-wise, but I really like this quote. He said, intelligence gets beat by emotional regulation and patience every day.
Ah, that's good.
It's like so true. So you can know to do all the right things, but if you can't emotionally regulate and be patient through the process, then it's not going to matter. Of course, it's handy to be bright. It's handy to understand things. Read the books, absolutely go to the groups, absolutely do all those things. But if you struggle in the family dynamics around those pieces, then you're going to struggle. I don't sense you guys have that much,
Right.
but those are the stories that I hear more. It's like dad keeps throwing the wrench at me or keeps screaming at me or keeps, Bill, I can't imagine you ever throwing. And if you did throw something, it would probably be like a airflow measurement device of some sort.
One of the 3 thermal imagers on his desk. Yeah.
Right.
Right. It's a very expensive tool to throw. So it's risky. Yeah, risky.
But something there, and thank you for transitioning this family business in general. Do you know Billy has 5 siblings?
I knew it was a lot. I didn't know it was actually 5. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've had family meetings. You want to talk about that, Bill?
Yeah, and they've gotten better over the years. And I'm just saying, as far as like a participation and listening and actually caring to a degree, but we tried to do them once a year, and now we're doing them like 2 or 3 times a year. And they're just, especially with the transition coming up, it's a little bit more pressing for them to understand what's going on too. And I just think they're good for clarity within your family, and nobody really has any questions about what's going on because it's not just me and Bill. It's everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah, so I'll add a spiritual thought to that. I can't help, but if forgiveness and reconciliation and a desire for it doesn't exist, like you're just going to have a hard time. You're going to get mad. There's a lot of ways that you can get offended in the family business. And if you don't have that as some base thing in your life, that we know we have to forgive other people because they do stuff wrong, and so do I. And you the desire to reconcile and have good relationships, if that's not the priority, like I can't imagine that. Family business would be really bad. It would be wouldn't even be enjoyable.
Yeah, and to your point, the family meetings thing, I don't know that we've ever officially structured that. But again, is that surprising? We don't officially structure things. But it is really important. I actually talked to another business owner just the other day who does something similar, because sometimes it's not necessarily the family member, meaning the blood relative. Sometimes it's the spouse or the ancillary, and they hear a story and they take it the wrong way, and then it becomes a thing. And I think however you go about making sure that stays in check, I think do it like the scripture says, as much as it depends on me, be at peace with all men, or depends on you, be at peace with all men. Be a peacemaker as much as you can. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going to dislike your decisions or they're going to think that it was the wrong choice. And that's also something as a leader, I think you just have to get totally comfortable with, is that if somebody's mad at you because of a decision you made, they're going to go home and they're probably going to talk a little smack to their spouse. And if you hear that through the grapevine and it hurts your feelings, you probably shouldn't be in leadership, because it's just a reality of making decisions that impact people's lives. And in family business, that does get amplified. But that's also that, and I have some of this naturally, but I've learned a lot of this from Leilani too. It's like, just don't have a problem with people. You're going to have issues, but then when you see that person next time, go give them a hug. Go talk to them about their kids. Go don't let that fester, because it will just continue to grow. And if you play those things in your head, it'll just get worse and worse too. You're going to make hard choices that make people upset. That's life. Just make the best ones you can. And then even if they're the ones who are being standoffish or they don't want to talk to you anymore, just be kind. Be kind, go out of your way to be kind. And eventually that stuff will fade away.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I'm going to say, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I was just starting to have fun, but okay, Bill. Yeah. Such a buzzkill.
I should be kind to Bryan and let him keep talking.
I'm rambly. So yeah, you got to be kind to my rambliness.
Well, I'm an old guy. I tell stories all the time. I find myself just telling stories all the time. Like, oh, stop it, Bob.
It happens.
Are you that way, Bill, as you get older?
Yes. In fact, I'm doing some in-house training using Bryn Cooksey's videos with permission. And I stop them like every 15 seconds and tell a story that's related to what we're learning.
Well, they trigger things. You've had so much experience in real life. And I just like, oh, that made me think of something.
And I'll be self-facing here and say, I guess I just want to appear human. There's no airs about me, except when I don't wash. But I'm human. I'm who you're looking at, who you're talking to is me. There's no other layer to me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's why I tell stories, just like that one.
All right. Well, this has been a real pleasure talking to you guys. It's a topic that I honestly get asked about all the time. I'm sure you guys do too. I'm going to ask Juan to work with you guys to put together the list of show notes with that list of books that Billy discussed, because people always love that, to go through with those books. And I can maybe add in a few, probably most of mine are also on your list, but specifically on succession planning, because I think that's, if people came here for like a formula for succession planning, obviously we didn't lay that out here, but the books will. And I think we kind of all said our piece here. I'm going to just ask you, Bill, to give one wrap-up note on this, because again, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this over the years, just in terms of how you feel comfort-wise and just happiness with your decision. Because I think a lot of people are faced with this decision of potentially selling the business or sticking it out. I've always been pretty heavy on the one side of not selling. But that was a decision you had to make. And so now sitting where you sit, are you glad you made that decision, or how do you emotionally process that?
It's like saying goodbye to a friend that you can visit, but it won't be the same because you're like in a different country. You can still communicate, but it won't be the same. And I would say, and prepare your next life, your next endeavors. Think about that very specifically. I hear so many instances of people who retire and then just literally fade away, like they lose their humanity, their health, their spirit. And I don't want that to happen to me. So prepare for what will next interest you and attract your attention and keep you vibrant and engaged with the world.
Good.
You avoided the question of, are you happy?
Okay, I'll say I am happy, but I'm going to miss that friend, TruTech.
Yeah. Don't you hate it when people ask you that? Are you happy? Or like, it's like asking somebody what the meaning of life is. It's a little complicated. But anyway.
All of us at the end of the day have somewhat of an ego, Bill. For me, it's like, I think I'm being honest. I'm dealing with like, I'm not the guy anymore, and I'm not, and I don't want to be, and I can't be, and I'm okay with it, but I still have emotions about that, I think, on some level. I think it's good to be honest about that. Yeah.
Yes.
You can still beat me at golf more often than not at this point. So.
Yeah, but I can see the end of the road there,
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Building HVAC Science podcast. We took a little detour into the world of business succession. If you like what you heard today and haven't subscribed, please search for Building HVAC Science in your favorite podcast app, or even just ask Alexa to play it. That's a cool little trick. Tell me if you tried that. You can follow us on Facebook by searching for Building HVAC Science. And if you've got questions or ideas or topics, email us at marketing@TruTechTools.com, TruTechTools.com. Some of the topics we discuss require professional training and experience, not so much this one. But if you hear those, be sure you're a trained pro and you know how to apply those appropriately. Building HVAC Science podcast is produced by TruTech Tools Limited. Full disclosure, I'm a co-owner of TruTech. The opinions expressed on the show, those are my guests, myself, my co-host, depending on who's speaking, of course. And if you're looking for any tools or test instruments mentioned in the podcast or just in general, please take a look at TruTechTools.com, TruTechTools.com, and use the offer code HVACBS for a listener discount. Thanks for listening and supporting the show. Subscribing helps you stay current and helps us reach more people who care about the work we're doing, the topics we talk about. And we appreciate you being part of the Building HVAC Science community. Until next time, take care.